Hello, good evening. Welcome to the March 13th Abington Finance Committee meeting. We are continuing to prepare for town meeting, which is just a little over 2 weeks away, which is crazy. Tonight we will be going over budget presentation with the school department. We have our superintendent and our soon-to-be superintendent here. We will discuss the overall budget, where it stands. We will discuss the warrant articles and where they stand. We have a couple of guests to talk to us about some of the warrant articles. We have our Board of Health here. We have our town moderator here. Looks like we've got the athletic director from the schools, so I think we'll be talking about one of the articles. Could also be talking about some of the school budget, but I'm not sure if he's planning on doing that. And then we will review the rest of the warrant articles. We'll review any minutes that we have available. We do have one set of minutes available, liaison reports, correspondence, and discuss upcoming meetings. So why don't we get to it? The school department wanna come join us? Peter, Felicia.
Hello.
Thanks for having us.
How are you guys doing?
How are you?
Doing well.
I'm a small part of the presentation and the show tonight.
I was gonna say I wasn't 100% sure you were gonna come this
Oh yeah,
year,
absolutely.
so-
No, I'm still on the clock, so it's still my watch. So, but what I want to say is what I say every year, and the reason I say it every year is because I mean it. I've been through a lot of budgets in Abington, and every year we come to the finance committee, and I know how much work the finance committee puts into this, and so I appreciate the opportunity for us to come to you to explain our needs and what we're trying to do for kids. I appreciate the time that you all put into this, because I know it takes a lot of time. I don't think people in the community necessarily know how much time you all put into this, and you get $0 for the work you do, unless there's a line item in here that I haven't seen.
There are line items that people think we're getting money from.
So just I want to thank you both for having us, and then for all the work that you're doing. And you'll probably hear this 6 or 7 times tonight. We're here tonight for this presentation to answer your questions and give you information, but we're not going anywhere. If you have other questions, something you think of later, our job is to make sure you get the answers to every single question you have.
We definitely,
Thank you.
yeah, thank you. We definitely appreciate the work that you guys put in. We know how big a portion of the town's budget the schools are, and we know that you guys do not take that lightly. And you put a lot of effort in, and you, a lot of times when it's needed, bend to try and fit the overall budget and the needs of the rest of the town. So
I should thank the gentleman to my right and the one over on the left. We have had multiple meetings with them, working on just exactly what you said, trying to find a consensus budget package to come in with. We're going to continue to work on that together, and because you said that, Matt, it reminded me that I should acknowledge Andrew and Scott.
do you guys want to kick off with
Sure.
highlights and?
Sure. So I think that you, Andrew, had uploaded this maybe to your,
Thank you.
yeah, to the OneNote, but I also have copies for you tonight. There's an update. This is update to the budget. And here's the update. So, did you want to? Yeah. So as Peter said, we've been working closely with Scott and Andrew to get to a consensus budget in the town, and we'll continue to do that right up until town meeting. I'd also like to thank, here tonight with us is one of our Budget and Finance Subcommittee, School Committee Subcommittee members, Heidi Hernandez. I'd like to thank Heidi for being here tonight. The other members, Melanie Whitney is unable to be here tonight, but they've been intimately involved as well in our budget process. So what you have in front of you in the packet is the budget book that you've seen in previous years. If it's okay, I'd like to take a minute to just go through that, what's in it, and answer any questions you may have. I'll do an overview, and if there are questions that come up, feel free to ask, but as an overview, we have a table of contents, we have a budget message on the first page. The budget proposal number is different now because we've made reductions. This is since our January school committee meeting, and the second handout are the adjustments that we've made so far. There's a planning schedule, there's information on our class sizes, historical class sizes, and then as of October 1st of this school year, the number of students in each grade. There's a listing of all staff in the Abington Public Schools by school and by position. The next page is how our budget is appropriated. And you can see that about 70% of our budget goes directly to instruction, and then the rest is made up of special education, operation and maintenance, other school services and administration. There's an increase by major category page, and again, I gave you a replacement to that we're going to spend some time on tonight. The next page are the staff requests. The top portion of the staff requests were all the positions that were included, or the positions that were included in our initial proposal in January, and I'll talk about the 2 positions that we have still in the budget proposal. The other ones have been cut from our budget. The next 3 pages are our instructional materials requests and technology requests. Those are all textbooks, licenses, instructional materials that are used in our classrooms every day throughout the year. So you can see a list of all of those. We have our budget articles, school department budget. We have the out-of-district vocational transportation. That's the bus to Norfolk Aggie. That I'll spend a second on that. The question often comes up, it's a separate warrant article every year. As a town, as a community, as a town, we're responsible for providing students an opportunity to go to Norfolk Agricultural School and provide transportation. I organize transportation for 11 communities on the South Shore, and we share the bus ride. So the cost of we actually have 2 buses, and the cost of the 2 buses are split between the 11 communities. And that is something that I organize in the summer, and that reduces, obviously, the price by an 11th to get our students to Norfolk Aggie, and it's about $17,000 a year for transportation. The town meeting article for the continuation of the substance abuse prevention article, that's something that's funded by fines that are levied against businesses in town, and then it's not funded by town meeting, but this is to allow the continuation of that fund.
1 second.
Yes.
Felicia, just because I just thought of it. Scott, we were talking about last week the money that comes into the town that for substance abuse, the
opioid one that we're
Is that something, like
rescinding
if the
language on.
schools needed more resources, is that something that the school could
If they had a program that fit into the categories, sure,
just,
Yep, could write a grant for that.
absolutely.
Thank you. And then the next, I think, 6 pages are line by line of our budget. It's everything that we spend in every area within the school department. So this is how we would propose. This has the original budget amount of $31,895,000, but this is the how every dollar is spent within the Abington Public Schools. Electricity, heating, salaries, pencils,
I can't help but
special
notice, is
education.
that a decrease in the superintendent's salary?
Mr. Schaefer's retiring and Dr. Michelle is coming in. Yes, so there's a savings. Thank you. There's actually savings across the reorganization of the central office between me becoming superintendent, the new assistant superintendent's coming in, and the new director of finance and operations. We did a bit of a reorganization in terms of titles and responsibilities, but it's saving money in the end
And doesn't add additional bodies.
and doesn't have bodies.
Is anyone coming in from outside, or is it all?
They are not. The current director of curriculum and instruction, Dr. Chris Basta, he's becoming the assistant superintendent, and his responsibilities will be more curriculum instruction and assessment. And then Sarah Gainey, who is currently the school accountant and is here tonight with us, she's going to be the director of finance and operations.
However, Chris is, not brand new to the district, but he hasn't been here, but
Hasn't been here
he
as
was a
well.
principal here, and then he moved
Yeah.
to central office.
Yep. So he's been here about, I think this is his 5th year. So if there aren't any, we can come back to any questions you might have on the budget book, but I thought I would spend a minute spend more time on the increase by major category page, which is where we're seeing increases within our budget, which is that single page handout.
Does anyone have questions before we move to that?
So our increase by major category page is broken down by categories. And the first category is our salary account. This is a salary account for all employees within the Abington Public Schools. And we anticipate we're going into the 3rd year of our collective bargaining agreement with all of our unions and associations. And we anticipate that our contractual obligations will be going up $1,044,015, and that's for the 340 employees within the Abington Public Schools.
Different than what's on here,
No.
no? Oh, thank you, sorry.
Sorry.
We should try to steal an updated
Yep,
English
sorry.
page, please.
Where exactly are we in life of contract?
We are going into our 3rd year, so we'll be opening negotiations we anticipate in the fall. We are anticipating the need of a 1st and a 6th grade teacher.
I
And
noticed the 6th grade
Yeah,
numbers
I did
jumped
too.
on students
27,
per
that's-
class. So,
yes. And if, Peter, can you help me with the numbers? If we don't get the 6th grade teacher, the numbers will be,
We'll be at 29, which, and then if, 3
Not
kids
ideal.
move to town, you breach 30 in 3 of those sections.
yeah.
We track migration in and out, and so we just took our last, I'll call it a census, about 2 weeks ago, because we want to continue to track it. We would track it all the way up until a decision has to be made, but that number's been fairly static. It hasn't moved.
and same thing with the 1st grade. The 1st grade numbers as well,
Yeah.
we'd be adding an 8th section of 1st grade.
Right.
Wouldn't be 29, would be 27.
27? You don't want to, you want to teach kids how to read with 27 kids in a room.
That's
And they
how-
were at 20, that's a big jump.
Then we anticipate, we have 3 teachers that we anticipate to be retiring, so a $56,000 retirement offset. And what that means is a teacher that's retiring retires at a higher salary, and then we anticipate hiring their replacement at a lower salary. So we anticipate a $56,000 reduction in our salary account based on retirements. Programs with other districts is special students with in special education that go to schools outside of Abington for their educational needs. And we don't often see a negative number here. We almost never see a negative number here. We anticipate a reduction of $179,607 in our out-of-district special education tuitions. And that is for a number of reasons. One is we have a few students that are graduating, aging out of their program. We have other students, we always have students that we anticipate that may go out, but right now that we have more graduating or aging out than we anticipate going out, or their costs are less. And also we anticipate bringing back a couple of students from out-of-district placements back into Abington because they've been successful in their special education placement, and we believe we have a program in Abington that can suit their needs. So I'm going to say I'm very proud of our reduction in special education, but there are years that absolutely doesn't happen, and that is based on children and needs and schools. And so this year it happened, and then next year there's a good chance it won't happen.
Felicia, where are you on that cutoff for if a very
I
expensive
love when you ask this question.
placement
I love when you ask
comes
this
in?
question.
And if you
So-
would just explain that.
Yep,
just
I'm going to
because-
explain it. So there in Massachusetts, there's the April 1st cutoff for special education students. So if a student within the state of Massachusetts moves to another school district before April 1st, the district that they move into is responsible for their tuition the following year. So you can budget for it, you can plan for it. If they move in after April 1st, so from April 1st till the end of the following school year, if they go to a collaborative placement, North River Collaborative, in our case, North River Collaborative, South Shore Collaborative, Reed's Collaborative, then Abington's responsible for them. If they move and go to a private special education program, then the school that they were at is responsible for them for the following year. Financially, we're responsible for their education. The sending district is responsible for their tuition. And right now, as we get closer to April 1st, then we feel more confident that we're not going to get a move-in that we're going to be responsible for
Because some of
next
those
year.
tuitions can be upwards of, it could be,
$500,000.
Yeah.
And what we've seen is tuitions are high, and special education transportation has become very high, very expensive as well. So you're paying not just the tuition, you're also paying the transportation. And these are students that need it. It's not, and so I don't want anyone to think that we don't believe this is where students need to be. There's just there's financial implications to that.
It's not that as a department or as a town, we don't want to pay it. We just have to figure out how to pay it.
Exactly.
and it's a hard number to,
Yeah.
you could go 500,000 either way.
Right. Yes.
Depending on the time of year it is, and so it makes
Exactly.
crafting the budget.
Yes.
And that could be easily verified. So it's not, and because we've had colleagues in other towns that have had somebody move in from out of state, and all of a sudden you're responsible for this big bill. Well, you're able to show people, you would take the name off, redact the name to protect people's privacy. You say, here's the date they moved in, here's the bill, this is what we can't avoid paying. This is what the services that we have to provide the child.
All of that I described around special education tuitions, those are only if students move from within Massachusetts. If someone moves from another state,
I jumped
then
ahead, sorry.
then you're responsible for their tuition regardless of when they lived in Abington or in the community of Massachusetts.
Sorry, I jumped ahead of you.
No, that's okay. It filled in the story nicely. And then the second piece of special education tuition is Circuit Breaker. And Circuit Breaker is a reimbursement program with the Department of Education. So in any given year, in this school year, we submit all of our bills for our students that go to an out-of-district special education program. Abington is responsible, and I'm gonna round the number, but Abington is responsible for the first approximately $50,000 of the bill. We have to pay that regardless of how much the rest of the tuition is.
Per student,
Per
50,000
student.
per
Per
student.
student, thank you. And then any dollar over 50,000, we get reimbursed in the following year. So, and that's called circuit breaker. So we anticipate next year we'll get 75% of every dollar over $50,000 for those special education students that go out of district. So we're anticipating next year that our circuit breaker reimbursement will be about the same as it is this year.
You feel confident in that percentage?
I-
Because there's been years where it's been as low as 60, 65%.
I think we
and-
remember those years, yes. I am fairly confident in that number. That's the number that has been shared with us by the Department of Education. So throughout the spring, we have meetings as business officials, and usually in January, they start off and say, you should probably think about 68%, 70%, 72%, and then after the governor's budget came out, they said you can estimate at 75%. The next category for the school department is other school services, and we are entering what will be a fourth. We have a bus contract with First Student, and we had a 3-year contract with 2 one-year options. We exercised the first year of the option, and so we're anticipating a 3% increase to our regular education transportation, which, considering what bus contracts are coming in right now for districts, 10 times 3%. So I feel very confident with our decision to exercise the year 1 of the option, and so that increases $55,228. Special education transportation, I spoke about a few minutes ago. We're seeing a significant increase in the cost of special education transportation. Part of that is the number of vendors has decreased. Part of that is personnel costs more for vendors, and we go out to bid. We try to be as competitive as we can. We call as many vendors as we can, but we anticipate our special education transportation to increase by $52,291. In our original budget proposal, under technology and instructional materials, we had 2 items. One was technology, laptops and related peripherals for $240,000, and I believe that has been moved to the capital plan. And the second is our instructional materials in virtual high school, and those are what's included on that list in your packet, and I believe that has also been moved over to capital, $225,391.
Yep. And we saw that, was it last week or the week before? We saw that change. Yep.
We have a 4-year laptop replacement program right now for our students. And so we have a 1-to-1 computing in grades 5 through 12. So in our current configuration, a student gets a laptop in 5th grade. They use it for 4 years. At the end of 8th grade, we collect that laptop, or the beginning of 9th grade, we collect that laptop, and then they get a new laptop for grades 9 through 12. The laptops that are collected, those laptops are evaluated for readiness. They're refurbished in-house, and whichever laptops can, and it's a great majority of them, are then used in the elementary classrooms. So we really have 1-to-1 computing in grades 1 through 4. Also, those laptops just don't go home. So they stay in the classrooms with our students. Other laptops that need to be there, the parts are used. We like I said, we do 95% of the refurbing and repairs in-house, and we use whatever parts we can from whatever laptops we can. Then we have operation and maintenance, maintenance, supplies, materials, and contracted services. an increase of $43,881, and an increase in natural gas and heat based on contract pricing of $120,672. So we are currently, our current proposed school committee budget is of $30,946,720, a 4.2% increase, or $1,234,094. And I am welcome to answer any questions that you might have.
Start with Barbara. Barbara usually has the longest list.
Don't have anything right now.
I think last year we added to the ESL, or the English Learners Program. How's that going? How's the need there? I remember talking last year, and it kept increasing and increasing year after year. So
I think right now our numbers in EL, in our initial budget proposal, we had proposed additional staffing in EL, and through our budget process, it wasn't our greatest priority. Our Student Opportunity Act money that the town received over the last few years has definitely helped that need for our EL students, and built special education program as well.
So I think our overall population of English learners is about 10%. And we continue to see that grow.
A question had come up recently about outgrowing the building, or that there was talk of that we had already outgrown the building.
Several buildings, maybe buildings. There was question about.
Yes. So at our last school committee meeting, I spoke a little bit about this. Part of our elementary schools are aging and starting to have significant infrastructure issues. We did a evaluation. We've talked about the Woodsdale roof for many years. We've been able to, the maintenance department, Jason Lynn, and the roofing contractor have been able to keep that, continue to keep that watertight. At some point, that roof is going to need to be repaired. And we have seen and continue to see more and more issues at the Beaverbrook Elementary School around our heating system. The Beaverbrook Elementary heating system is a closed steam heating system. So steam is produced in the boilers, it's sent through piping in the concrete slab of the building and sent into the classrooms. And throughout the last few years, more and more and more steam leaks have occurred within the slab. No danger to
Was
students.
something recently fixed on that, or done to that, or something that
Every
I
day.
remember?
Frequently.
Yeah, a lot.
But I remember something at going before a town meeting, or maybe it was discussion that it was going, maybe it got cut
The
from the last.
assessment that you got done?
No, so through the use of some ARPA funding, we hired a consultant to do an evaluation of our
Okay.
heating system. That might have been
I think
might have
that's
been
what
on
it
the
was.
list of ARPA funded projects. So we had a consultant come in who did an evaluation of the heating system, and his recommendation, or the company's recommendation, is to abandon the current heating system and put in a new heating system at over $6 million in today's dollars, not including any asbestos abatement. That is there's asbestos encapsulated in all of in Woodsdale and Beaverbrook. Not any harm to anybody, but if you're going to be doing construction work, it's a significant. We anticipate that price would even double to replace the heating system. And then what do you do with students? That's not a project that can be done over 8-week summer.
Right.
So that, the Woodsdale roof, some space issues. As a community, I believe that we will be looking at the possibility, a feasibility study for what to do with our elementary schools.
What
So
about
did-
space issues at the high school?
So when we built, you might remember this from when we built the middle high school, the school building authority who partnered with us at over 65%, they paid 68% for every dollar that the town spent, had a very specific formula for how many square feet you could build based on your current student size, what they estimated to be your enrollment projections. We actually went, Peter and I and a couple members of our building committee actually went into the Mass School Building
I think
Authority.
one of them is behind us.
One of them is
Sean Riley.
Sean Riley. We went in to MSBA more than once to argue with them to let us build more classroom space, and it wasn't an option. So, and classroom space and storage, which is also an issue in all new school buildings you'll hear. So we built to the maximum that we were allowed to build. Over the years, since we've been in the building, it's actually our 7th year in the building, which is, kind of hard to believe. We've built a program. We've been able to grow in some areas, and space is tight. We're not bursting, but space is tight. And if we were to do a feasibility study for our elementary building needs, I'm guessing part of that study would also be about the pre-K that's in that school and that classroom space, and would we and I'm not saying that would be the answer, but that would be all part of the study. We would look at all classroom spaces in Abington and what makes the most sense for the future.
So I think they reimbursed us at a rate of 58%,
58, sorry.
if my memory is correct.
That's all.
We
Yes.
test for asbestos, so we're compliant with the HERA. We talked about that earlier. We're just like,
Yep.
people watching on cable, I make sure you know, we test for it, and it's all encapsulated, so it's safe until you move it. And then the last piece is that we believe through the demographic studies, are we going to talk about that? That our growth has been, we anticipate, and it will be more static than it has been. What happened was we had students that were going out of the district to receive their education, stay in the district, and that's why our population bloomed over that 4-year period of time, that we had smaller classes leaving and then larger classes entering the building. Now, that doesn't include if there's a lot of growth in Abington. We're not pro-growth or anti-growth. It's just a fact that if more people move in and they bring kids, we're going to have to educate them. But the growth that we saw over the last 7 years was really families choosing not to leave Abington but stay in Abington, which is healthy for the community because people are more invested in your community in Abington. So the population piece is less of a concern as it was as we saw those bigger numbers, but more of a concern now is just the age of the building, and does Abington want to continue to pay dollar for dollar their own dollars to renovate, update, keep these buildings going, or have the state come and help pay for a newer building, and the state, unless the equation has changed for Abington, and I don't think that the wealth has changed significantly over 7 years in Abington, you could hope for about a 58% reimbursement from the state. So they would help, instead of Abington dollar for dollar, Abington pays far fewer dollars for better buildings down the road.
And that all becomes part of a feasibility study,
Down the road.
Well, so,
sooner
Yeah.
than later.
we want to ask Abington what it wants to do when it's responsible to do so after the homework's been done.
Because even if Abington wants to build a new school, there's a whole Mass School Building Authority process that you
Yes.
might remember that you have to go
It's
through.
not instant.
It's not, no. And then there's building.
What's the timeline for that process? Just generally.
So you have to be invited in at different stages with the School Building Authority. So the first stage is to put together a building committee and write statement of interest that that the town of Abington is interested in this. That gets voted by the school committee, the board of selectmen, gets submitted. And then MSBA looks at all the projects in the state and decides where yours ranks in comparison to the other projects within the state. So it could be from, I would say the fastest that you could be invited into feasibility to shovel in the ground is probably 3 years, and then it's another 2.5 to build. And that's fast. That's a fast process.
And that's if you get approved into the program.
That's if you get approved into the program,
Yes.
if you get the funding within your community. You have to get funding in your community first for a feasibility study, then you have to get voted, you have to have the vote to fund the project, and you have to be invited in and then invited in. Invited in for feasibility and then be invited in for your project.
As we talked about when the South Shore VOTEC was here, they applied into the program many times before they actually got accepted
Yes.
into it. And they're in that process right now,
Yes.
but it was a long time for them to get to that process.
Yes.
To get to this stage. And this stage isn't even building.
Right. And I don't want, I'm surely not going to speak for the Mass School Building Authority, but I can tell you that there's only this many dollars, and the cost of construction is so much higher that there's fewer projects that they can fund. So,
We started looking for a piece of land for the building you drive by as you come to town hall in 2000.
Yep.
That's how long it took to get it moving.
Andrew, do we still have a delta on the budget at the moment?
We're still finishing that up.
Okay. So do we, or
About where do we stand?
I didn't either.
the overall budget, do we
The
still have a
overall
delta?
The deficit
Yeah.
currently.
Yeah, there's been no changes since last week. We're still waiting on some numbers. We've been meeting constantly and working. But I think it really will be right down to next Wednesday before we can review.
And so that was
$300,000 to $400,000.
300 to 400,000.
This sheet is very helpful. So, I mean, obviously a big chunk of it's going to be contractual obligations, but when you look at all the other increases and you compare it to the rest of your budget, they're pretty minimal, in comparison. There was, my understanding, a difference in Chapter 70.
Yes.
We were expecting more, and we got less.
Yes.
Which then, my understanding is the amount that of the budget that hits, the rest of our budget is higher than it normally would, or at least what we were expecting. It to
Yeah,
be.
over the last few years.
Yeah.
Chapter 70 has been higher,
Okay.
yes.
Because we didn't talk about that yet, right? The Chapter 70, that didn't come up.
Correct.
I think that's an important piece to just point out. We were expecting more, and we got less.
Yes.
Overall. So-
Any chance that any of that will change at all
For the better.
with the
always
joint
a
resolution?
chance.
There's always
always a
always a
chance.
chance. I think Scott would, from what I'm hearing, Peter's hearing, what Scott's hearing, is any changes won't be $400,000.
No.
So can I just say what you say often about the Student Opportunity Act? I learned this from Felicia.
Sure.
Um,
I'm not sure what he's gonna say.
So, one of the things that the Student Opportunity Act has done for Massachusetts is the money was there to bring us up to our other systems already work. Abington's been underfunded by Chapter 70. I can say that's a fact, because otherwise we wouldn't have received those giant amounts of cash over the last couple of years, when only 14% of the systems in Massachusetts received that additional cash. So we were underfunded. Now, because they're coming to the end of the balancing us with everybody else, they're shaving down that money. We still got more than other systems with the just under $300,000 increase, but in previous years, when we saw the larger budgets for the school department, there was money from the state to help fund those things. Somebody looking at budget histories may look at the school system as out of whack over the last couple of years, but that again, that money was funded, and now they're getting us off of that growth because they feel they've balanced us with other systems. Now, other systems right now are struggling to meet the budget needs in terms of what they anticipate for next year. There's a big effort from the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents to push our legislators to increase the funding for schools in Massachusetts. It's not responsible to bank on that, though.
Huge craziness going on over in Brockton
Yeah.
with,
A lot
The
of,
budget
a lot
is-
of neighboring communities
Yeah.
are having
Mm-hmm.
a really hard time.
And Brockton obviously had another situation with other dollars in the previous budget cycle, yeah, on top of that.
For, just looking at what we have in the SharePoint or OneDrive, a 4.2% increase. Now, assuming that that's going to be pretty standard year to year, if we do, you know, if Chapter 70 levels out and we kind of expect that, or even if it decreases, like, what's 4.2% of 30 million?
1.2 million.
Is that what? Okay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a big hit that we would have to be prepared for.
In my experience, the school system needs between a 3 and a 3.5
Okay.
to get by. My own theory on this is the taking care of the needs of these classes, but on top of that, we've all experienced inflation, and this is, if you look at that percent compared to the inflation rate that we're all dealing with, it's not out of whack.
Possibly not even up to
So
inflation.
hopefully, as inflation, stops, we get back into a more regular cycle.
Yeah. No. Hopefully. I think just as a
Hopefully
committee and
inflation
as
does
a
slow.
town manager next year, you know, we can't be surprised by it. I feel like we were all kind of surprised because Chapter 70 was not where we thought it would be. Assuming it stays the same, you know, we're going to be ready for that 4 or 3.5 to 4%.
I think you're right that we can't anticipate that Chapter 70 is gonna, I think they're done balancing this.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we're gonna see a $2 million increase in Chapter 70
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
So that's really my observations to this, you know, and it's, the initial conversation is, education department and how much that amount is, but what it really comes down to is the Chapter 70 being lower than expected, you know, we gotta pick that up, so. That's all I have.
Greg?
Can I? We're taking turns.
Yeah. I mean, going forward, can we try to budget for less? And I don't mean like an increase, literally like a negative. So when we do get whatever bump it is we get, you guys end up being somewhat happy. You know what I mean? Like, I'll give you an example. Like for us, we try to go into the year at level set. We know we're going to end up spending more money if we're continuing to grow. But if we don't, we know we don't have to fire somebody. Do you know what I mean? Within the first 3 months. And so that's, again, I know you guys, it's very different with the contractual obligations, but is there any way to start budgeting like that, or is it just possible to do it?
We're always looking for ways to save money.
Yeah.
We are always looking for ways to cut our expenses. We have a $30 million budget, about 24 of that are salaries, 25. About 3 are special education, 1 is transportation, and then 1 is keeping lights on, buying paper, copy machines,
Sure.
pencils. So it's really people. A great majority of our budget is people. And but yes, we try to, when people leave, we try to hire at a lower rate. We are always looking to decrease our supplies if we can. Asking people not to make as many copies, not trying to limp along with older supplies. One of the questions that we've had over the years in here, and I think it's just important to just talk about for a second, because I know it's on the, you see it on the instructional materials page. Years ago, when we were in school, we could have textbooks, and if we didn't have the money to buy new textbooks, we could reuse the textbooks for 10 years. 12, you would get a textbook that would have, you know, a kid in your class's sibling that graduated 15 years ago's name in it, because we could use those for years and years and years. Since licensing has come up, and since textbook companies, everything, they practically give you the book for free, and you have to buy the online license. And those licenses have, you know, a 3-year lifespan, a 5-year lifespan, and then you have to renew the licenses. And so much of what we do in schools today is technology driven that we depend on those licenses. Just like in any of our businesses, we depend on those licenses. So we don't have a choice anymore. That's an expense that if you had told me 10 years ago that, I can remember being in the finance committee meeting and someone saying, well, then just don't pay the licenses. And we're like, well, we can't be using technology and then not having the licenses. Like that doesn't, it's like, you can't use Microsoft, so, or Word. So that's become an expense that 10 years ago we didn't even anticipate would be an expense. But to your point, Greg, we are always looking for ways to decrease our expenses and try to save money, so that we don't see these increases. But just with contractual obligations, you know, like Dan said, you know, once you take that out, we're not talking about it's money. It is absolutely money. But such a big part of what we do is the people.
So in terms of positions also, because that's where the meat of it is, starting leaner would be a preference we'd have, but when we've got to assign a teacher for a certain amount of days for a certain number of kids for the year, you know, like other departments can hire someone later, we have to be ready to go for September.
Yeah.
And then even those other employees that we have, whether it's, you know, custodial or special education or other services for kids, we know what we need based on the educational plans that we have. And so each of those people in special education is assigned a list of kids for service, for providing service. So we do it as we go, I think the way you were saying, but we have to do it for the entire year more than most other organizations, because we know we've got those kids for the year, if that makes any sense.
Sure.
And I had met with you guys maybe 2 years ago with Paul.
Yeah.
My first month on the committee. It was really great to have that opportunity. But I remember you saying that you really had to stay competitive with the salaries too, and you kind of stay at the average, but also we want to be a little competitive to get the talent. And you mentioned in 2008 timeframe and how hard that was.
We're in the average.
Or we are in the average.
We are, because we don't want to, and I'm just freely and openly about this when we negotiate, if you're the lowest in the South Shore, you're not getting the people that you want us to get with kids. If we're the highest in the South Shore, we have to cut program, and it hurts kids in order to employ those people. So we want to be, and we've worked hard over the years to get ourselves in the average. I know it's not exciting to be in the average, but it's the right thing to do for us, for our salary accounts.
And that's for every employee, is the average. Every employee. We do. I'm like the salary survey queen of the South Shore. It's also important that we compare ourselves to the South Shore. We don't compare ourselves to Western Mass or to Metro West. We compare ourselves to our
Surrounding communities.
9 closest districts.
Not the
Which is
not the
a-
wealthier of the nine.
Which
but the nine.
is an interesting spectrum of
It is.
It is.
communities that are around us.
Yep. And we use, you just try to pick something and stay with that. And we've picked the districts that belong to North River Collaborative, to which we're a member district. And that includes probably one of the lowest paying districts south of Boston, and one that's high. It includes all of them, and then our neighboring districts, and it's our closest comparison.
It's also the way you settle a fair contract.
Yeah.
Because when you've got people that want to have teachers wear like sackcloth and fill the boiler in the morning when they come to work, it settles the argument that that's the wage that people make for the work that they do. When they want to take everything away from the teachers, when you have people that want to give everything to the teachers, it settles the argument. And when you're laying off people, which we've been through, and you try to fall asleep at night, you know that you've paid the average wage. You didn't give away the candy store, and you didn't cheat people. You've done the right and the fair thing.
I think too, at least within the last few years, it's a profession that is not as,
Attractive for
thank
people.
you, yeah,
It's hard to work from home when you're a teacher. A lot of people get to work from home.
right.
The market sets the rate to that. If there's a lack of people wanting to teach. With some of the tough budgets that other communities are facing, there may be more available people, sadly. But
Sure.
that'd be good news for us if we can get some good people.
I'm reminiscent of Paul mentioning at one point, it comes down to what's the priority of the town. You know, and if education is the priority of the town, then we have to ensure that that's the case. And I don't know if we ever settled on what that was. But, clearly it is.
It does drive your property values and, you know, what type of school system you
Desires of
have.
who's moving in.
Not
the
always a good
community.
thing, though. Not always a good thing. I'm dealing with that.
I understand that.
Anybody have anything else?
Sarah, anything else?
We're really not going anywhere, so if
Well-
you think of something later,
One of you is.
not for a while.
Peter,
For a
when
little
when is your last day?
I'm on till the last day of June.
Last year. So this will be our last meeting, probably with you presenting or helping to present or being a part of the budget process. And I just wanted to say, because I've been here so long, I have been able to watch you forge a really good relationship with the town side of things. That wasn't always the case. And so I think you've worked really hard to do that and do the right things
Thank you.
for kids, and
Thank you.
it is appreciated and you will be missed.
Thank you.
But I also heard that you, this coming weekend, you have a gig.
I have a gig. It's not paying, but it's a gig.
Do you wanna,
I'll
just
be-
for
I'll be,
anyone that's,
leading the parade.
so the,
So
The St. Patrick's Day
I was
parade.
flattered that St.
this
Patrick
weekend.
himself called me and asked if I would participate, and I appreciate that. It's an honor to do that. It really is.
you're the grand marshal, right?
Yeah.
Not just participating, you're the grand marshal.
And what time is the parade starting?
It starts at 1 o'clock. Oh, Mrs. Hernandez left, right? 1 o'clock. I should know that.
Don't be late, you'll be running down the road. And I just need, there'll be plenty of time for Peter accolades over the next couple of months, but, I know that we're both very thankful for the relationship that we've had with the town and that we've been able to, that Peter's forged over the last few years.
As goes the town, so goes the schools. As goes the schools, so goes the town.
And to echo what Barbara was saying, in the time that I've been on the committee, you've been superintendent the whole time that I've been on, even though I've been on for a while. But I've seen the work that you've done and the level of respect and growth of the school system through that. And it's been excellent work.
Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Hopefully, we didn't mess it up for your kids. It's,
Done well for mine.
Mine as well.
And he may be available next March for finance committee meeting.
thank you again.
We're always looking for an audience.
But like you said, we're not going anywhere. Please feel free to call if you have any questions, or come by and visit us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
All right. I think we can bring up our town moderator and our athletic director to talk to us about Memorial Field. You got right there.
It's one of the articles.
Yes. So this was Article, just to quickly get to it. So there's Article 28 as of right now. We understand the articles might get renumbered. For those who are watching, Scott isn't smirking, so the articles will definitely get renumbered. But Article 28 is to see if the town will vote to borrow, from the looks of it in here, I made this joke last week, $2 for Memorial Field improvements. We know it's definitely more than $2, but Sean, Peter, welcome. Thank you for coming.
Just to introduce Sean Riley, 271 Dorsey Street. I'm also town moderator, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here as basically a Greenway booster and someone who's been actively involved in the recreational activities in Abington. And
Peter Strino, 291 Dorsey Street, and also the athletic director at the high school.
so Peter and I are kind of cut from the same cloth. We both grew up in Abington, both went to Abington schools, both went to College of the Holy Cross. We actually now are next door neighbors, and we've been heavily involved in sports. Peter's the athletic director, the basketball coach. And so over the years, we've been jointly working on projects to kind of maintain some of the playing fields and some of the indoor athletic facilities and also improve them. And he kind of started this push on Memorial Field that it's kind of lost its luster. And so he wanted to have a big picture, like let's make a plan, a master plan for what the town would like to see down there if we had all the money in the world, which we don't. But what is it that you'd want to implement? Because if we, in the past down there, the Rotary Club built that concession stand as a community, a civic project. It was great. People came back and built the new press box. It's now 14 years old, 15 years old. ARPA money, the American Rescue Plan, infrastructure money would just rebuilt the varsity baseball field, because if you ever played in that, it was dangerous with the hops at first and third base. I can attest to it. We just rebuilt the girls softball field. If you haven't seen it, they just topped it off today with the stone dust. It's awesome. ARPA money also bought new scoreboards for Memorial Field and for the softball field to replace the one that was erected in the 1980s, I think. And the softball field scoreboard, they won the state championship in 2019 and didn't have the money or the ability to put a sign up on that field. So if you go down there now, it says home of the state championship. So I digress, but we were looking at what would you love to see down there, what are people looking for, and what can we improve that's already there, and what would we think for in the future. ARPA and community volunteers have also worked on the playground, which has been a huge success.
Looks really good.
Yeah, it's dynamite, and there's more to come. And in 2009, 2008, we also put in the new dugouts at the varsity field. That was community money. There's been a lot of community money put into this. And we'd like to kind of refresh it and look to the future. People have all sorts of ideas. And there's been a couple of problems down there that we want to address or kind of cure. And one of them, one of the first things that came up was the current status of the light towers down at Memorial Field. I know you've seen this, but the lights were installed, again, with completely donated funds in 1990. So they're now 34 years old. And Peter can tell you what he goes through to try to replace the bulbs or the fixtures.
Yeah, so one of the challenges that we face with the lights is the technology's so outdated. Finding the replacement parts is a struggle. So they have to be relamped, the metal haloid lights, so they have to be relamped about every 5 years is what it should be. We've stretched it a little bit beyond that, but they were due to be relamped a year ago. It's safe, you can play at it, but they're starting to go. So that was part of it, that we either have to relamp them, which we'll have to continue to do, and they're becoming more expensive because they're not manufactured as much and more challenging to find. So when we looked a little over a year ago now to begin the process, Jason Lynn, our maintenance director, finally found them in Texas after a couple months that we could get, and the price increase was significant, and I anticipate that would continue. And then obviously the older technology costs more to run. So we got to a point where we need to make a decision on what we're doing with the lights. Are we going to continue to relamp them with the current technology, or does it make sense to upgrade them? So that's one of the things that's in this article. And ultimately, how we got to the point where the article was probably about 6 years ago at this point. We started where people had different ideas of things they wanted to do down there. It started with the old tennis courts. Let's put this there, let's do that. And then, I'd love to see a hockey rink. And my fear was no one was kind of working together. It was people who wanted individual parts, and somebody was going to do something that 3 or 4 years later we're like, well, why did we put that there? That didn't make sense. So what we did is we worked with an outside contractor to kind of come up with a plan for the space that made sense and could be phased. So we approached them and said, what would you do with this space? And funded the study through the town manager's office to get that done. And they gave us a recommendation of phasing. You could do it in 1 phase, 10 phases, however you wanted to. And what's in this is what they recommended for the first phase. And essentially how I look at it is it opens Memorial Field up to a whole lot of possibilities. So it removes some of the restrictions. So I have a couple pictures
Can you
here.
just, because I think it's important, because I do still hear, we built a brand new high school. Why did we keep the football field and baseball fields down at Memorial?
Yep.
And that-
Behind the Frollo.
And that's just from Greg that she keeps saying.
The answer to that, MSBA would not fund A, artificial turf, B, the construction of grandstands. So it would have been, the town would have paid 100% of the dollar on that. There's also historical and basically the love of Memorial Field, where it's located, it's next to the Legion building. It is a memorial. It was built starting in the 1940s, basically after the war, and has been expanded ever since. So there was a lot of people in town who said, don't you dare move the football field from there and put it up there. We want to keep that. And it frankly is one of the better places to watch a game, whether it's a football game or a soccer game or a lacrosse game on that field. The elevation up, where the bleachers are, is great. So those were two of the reasons. The MSBA wasn't going to pay for it to be moved.
History and finances.
Yes.
Is what I usually tell people.
Right.
History and finances.
And we were both working on the school building committee, and the benefit of getting the 2 turf fields up here just basically made more playing space for the kids in Abington. So with Riley Field, the turf fields, the grass fields at Abington Middle High, and Memorial Field, all basically on the same boulevard, it's a great opportunity for a complex for both recreation and civic stuff.
Thank you. I just wanted to, because I do still hear that question. A
So,
lot from people.
Obviously, though, there are still some older aspects and drawbacks in the locker rooms or.
yes, the locker rooms were built in the 1930s in the basement of the Frollo.
So.
That's phase 2 or 3. But going back to the lighting now,
Space being a big one.
if you go down to we just gave you 2 pictures. One is
Yeah.
the existing conditions, what it was, and then a proposal of what it could be. If you're familiar with Memorial Field or with any football playing field, you have light towers, and they're typically placed around the 30-yard lines, 2 on each side of the field. But at Memorial Field in Abington, as you know, the baseball field overlaps the football field, so you can't put that 4th pole where it quote-unquote supposed to go.
outfield.
Right, or you're gonna have people running into a cement or steel pole.
Houston Astros found that out.
Yes. So one of the poles is way over near Ralph Hammond Lane. And that's been a problem because the light just doesn't get all the way to the field like it's supposed to. It's a little darker area. And when they were first installed in the 1990s, it was very bright because the bulbs were all brand new and stuff, but they've dimmed. And we've actually had photographers come to us and say, I have to adjust my camera when I come to Abington because it's getting duller.
Well, and lighting technology has advanced significantly in the last 34
Exactly.
years. So it was bright compared to what it was in 1989.
Right, the
but it's
LED
definitely
lighting
not
is
bright compared to now.
much easier to control, much cheaper to run. It's what we have at the high school now. It's what you'd see at any college or high school that's been built in the last 10 or 15 years. The other issue that has always been a safety concern down there is the overlap of the varsity and the JV baseball field. And for those of you who've ever been down there when there's a game going on, when the high school's playing, they have both games played at the same time because the visiting team comes over. And you literally have outfielders standing next to each other facing different directions with balls being hit in opposite directions. It's been, frankly, I don't know why it was designed that way to begin. Well, I do know why, because the Dust Bowl. The Dust Bowl is if you're up at the press box, it's the left rear out back there, which is the northeast corner. Right. At one point, that was a big mound of dirt and trees. So that's why the JV field was put where it was, because that was flat. In the 1970s, I believe, they took out the Dust Bowl and flattened it to expand the space. But the Dust Bowl is in horrible shape today. Literally, boulders and rocks are, visible. You fall down the wrong place with your knee or your elbow, and you're going to shatter it. And there has been some injuries down there. So the Dust Bowl, which is about a quarter of the space of Memorial Field, doesn't get used for safety purposes. So this all kind of came up, talking to this consultant, talking with Peter, talking to some of the user groups down there. We need to replace the lights and upgrade them. Great. If you're gonna upgrade the lights, you really should put the light pole where it's supposed to be. Okay, well, if you do that, you got to move the baseball field. And they said, well, we've always wanted to move the baseball field because we want to get rid of that safety issue. Well, where would you put the JV field? Well, we'd put it over in the Dust Bowl, and to do that, we'd have to clean up the Dust Bowl and bring in loam. Well, that's good. Now you can start using that area. What would you do with the current JV field? Well, we just grass it. Now you have a much longer and wider and bigger field and area for everyone to use for multiple purposes, and that would be right next to the new playground. It all started coming together. And people say, well, what would you do there in that wider open area? And we'd said, nothing yet, but you can't do anything until we do this phase one. Once phase one's in, then we go to the community and say, all right, what do you want to do here? Do you want, no, I'm not even going to throw out things because there's all sorts of different ideas and stuff, but we can't do anything until we fix the lights and move the JV baseball field over there and then increase the grass field area. So we get pricing from Musco Lighting for the lights. They're the ones that basically do everybody, from Boston College to Abington High School to all the high school. They estimated it would cost about between $535,000 to $570,000 for the light work. We added more to that estimate because National Grid sometimes puts fees in there. Would there be a cost to dispose of that cement pole we were going to remove? Because now we're going to keep the 2 cement poles, the light towers are on the home side, and we're going to put 2 steel towers now where they should be on the far side. The 1 cement pole that's over near Ralph Hamlin Lane, we're proposing to leave that there. The lights won't be used, they'll be abandoned, but leave the pole there because we may use that in the future as a town for whatever, put up new lights in the future, put up a sound system, whatever it is, but the pole's out of the way, so leave it there, could be fine. The cost to create a new baseball field, create a safe athletic field and expand the grass area, remove the current backstop. We got an estimate from a company that did the varsity baseball field. They did an outstanding job. They estimated that 3-acre work would be between 1.2 to 1.4 million. So if you take the high numbers, 1.4 million, and about 600,000 for lights, which is a high number, you get $2 million. Where do you come up with that? So Peter and I went to the Community Preservation Committee. Years ago, you couldn't use CPA money to invest in recreational space unless you had used CPA money to buy the recreational space. They changed that several years ago because a lot of towns were saying, we're not interested in buying, well, we need to fix what we have. So now you can use the money to invest in your existing space. And the great thing is, you can use the town's revenue. You got town revenue and state revenue and CPA funds. The town's revenue is the bulk of it. The town's CPA revenue can be used to pay annual bond payments if you want to spread over the cost. So if you wanted to borrow $2 million for 20 years, you can use the CPA money, you just dedicate that payment out of your local CPA revenue. You can't use the state CPA revenue because that fluctuates up and down too much. You use the town revenue.
And you wouldn't see any change to your taxes because you're
It's not a
already.
tax.
Right, you're
CPA.
paying the CPA.
Correct. So,
I was just meaning like if you go out to, if you borrow.
right.
You typically, when we borrow, we then see a tax increase, but that wouldn't happen in this situation because you'd be dedicating CPA funds, which are already in our taxes.
So
Right.
to just pause, when we borrow, sometimes we see an increase in taxes, sometimes we see we have to adjust for it within the budget, depending on
Right.
what the borrowing is.
Whether it's a debt exclusion or not.
Right.
In this case, it is not an increase in taxes, you're using CPA revenue. It does have to still get voted by town meeting to authorize the borrowing. And if I misspeak, anytime, Mr. Town Manager, please let us know. So Peter and I met with the town manager with this idea, the master plan, but phase one, which is critical to kind of open the doors for everything else. We met with the CPA committee, we met with the Recreation Commission, we met with the DPW, met with representatives from the American Legion, Memorial Trustees, the school department, the veterans agent, and everyone signed off, and they all signed a letter to the CPA saying, we support this project, which was great. CPA approved it. Now, as I mentioned, the $2 million we're hoping is a high number. We're using conservative cost estimates. The CPA took 2 votes, basically to support this, and then at a later meeting, they voted to allocate $300,000 of this year's CPA revenue immediately to the project to reduce the bonding amount or the borrowing amount. So I'm assuming this Article 28, as it's now listed, the Community Preservation Borrowing Article, would be 1.7 million. When the bids come in, we may end up not spending it all. If we are truly being conservative with our estimates, that's great. Article 6 is the CPA article, so in that you'll see 300,000 for Memorial Field Phase 1. And then you see this other article for the balance to be borrowed with CPA money. That article number may change. We might put it right behind the CPA so people can associate the two.
Makes sense.
Just 2 quick things on the work itself that I think is important to note with the lights. On the 2 new light poles that we put in, we also asked them to include some lighting on the backside, which is for the field that would be renovated. It wouldn't be enough to play a game, but one of the needs for youth sports in town is in October and into November. It's very difficult to practice with daylight. So right now, we're kind of limited to the turf. So this would open up that area as well. Again, you wouldn't be able to play games on it, but it would be plenty of lighting for practices. So we'd have more areas for kids to go in the evening and nights. And also in that price, it's for sod. So we would have access to it fairly quickly. So I know some people have pointed out, some of the seeded fields with the new building, it took several years for us to get on them. But the baseball field was sod and there was very minimal interruption to play. So obviously they're not gonna leave and we're on it the next day, but we're hoping with the timing we'd be able to minimize the disruption to get the work done hopefully in the late fall where daylight's already an issue, so they're not really on that space, and then come the following spring we'd be on it with no limitations. And it also includes updating and modernizing the irrigation system. So in terms of protecting the investment, it would be something that we'd be able to maintain hopefully.
And the goal with the lighting is if this passes town meeting on April 1st, we would hope to be able to go to bid as quickly as possible. It's gonna take some time to coordinate with the town manager, so that ideally the lighting would be replaced this summer before September 1st, before the fall sports season. And then as we enter the fall, which is the perfect time to put in grass, they would then bring in the field work out in the back in the Dust Bowl area. So as Peter said, if the lighting can get done by the end of the summer, and then the sod gets in by the end of the fall, you'll have all this space available to us. And it's become a concern to us about the lighting because we're losing bulbs. As I showed you some of those photos, we were literally at a game this past fall, and you heard the pop of everyone kind of turned, and it was something blue and was smoking on top of one of the towers. And there's a couple of bulbs up. Some of them came back on, thankfully. But it's used much more than football. It's not just a football field. And as you can see in our master plan, we've outlined where it's a soccer field also fits in that area. We've had soccer and lacrosse games in the past. Truly, they like to play up on the turf field now because it's a different game. But we also use it for night before the 4th. And we also use it for Abington Celebrates. And if we lose these lights, we lose all evening activities at Memorial Field until we put in new ones. So the timing, the cooperation, and the coordination is really coming together well. And the amount of support we've seen from all the different aspects and departments and people in the community has been great. And it's another example of where the Community Preservation Act has been in my opinion, a true benefit to this town for the things that they've done, and the other things that are on the list that they're doing just this year have been tremendous. So we met with the town treasurer and the town accountant, and I know they met, and they're talking about, they'll make the decision on what the bonding terms are, not us. But everything seems to be great.
I think it's important to recognize that this addresses two things that the town is going to have to address if they want to continue to use the space. So our hope was to do it the right way rather than continue to put Band-Aids on it, and to minimize the financial impact on the operating budgets, whether it was the school, the DPW, or the town. So our hope was to do it through CPA, and with their support, I think we can accomplish all of the goals and hopefully, have a long-term solution that also creates opportunities for us to continue to expand and grow. Like simple little things like the varsity baseball field, our kids have never played with a fence. This would open up the possibility where you could put a temporary fence in for the spring across the football field and have a fence. Right now, it's not an option because of the setup, where the light towers are in the fields. So something simple like that, it opens it up. So we're optimistic this solves a lot of problems that have to be addressed.
So, two things. First, quickly to your point about if we have problems, like this is addressing, like, if we want to continue using this space. If we didn't want to continue using this space, we would have to replace this space somewhere in town, because these are things that have to be offered and have to happen in a lot of.
You'd have all your football games, youth
All
and
your
high school
football
would be
games.
day games,
All your
and night before the
baseball
4th would not be
games,
possible.
town events. So looking to do something else would probably be a significantly larger cost, because you'd be starting from scratch somewhere.
Yeah.
Second part is backing up, just because I want to make sure I understand it. And if I want to make sure I understand it, I'm guessing there are people at home that want to make sure they're understanding it too. Borrow with CPA money. Can we go back over that just
Sure.
again?
So the Community Preservation Act, their revenue, the Community Preservation Committee takes in revenue every year from the CPA fee that is collected through your tax bill, but it's not a tax, it's a fee. Now, a lot of people say it's the same thing. There's truth to that, right? But according to their numbers this year, the local CPA revenue is $478,000. And the state is very low this year, it's $30,000, because that's based on revenue, documents that are filed at the registry of deeds, and there's been a lull in the registry of deeds. But so $478,000. So let's just say that on average, and Andrew, stop me if I'm wrong, but the local CPA revenues are always about $400,000 or a little bit, but let's use a conservative $400,000. That's pretty much a guarantee every year, because it's there, the 1.5% fee. So the committee basically has to agree, yes, this is worth it. And we had run some numbers down, and when we made our presentation, we said if you took a 20-year, $2 million bond, and you estimated 4%, it would be an annual payment of $147,200. If you said 5% was your interest rate, it was $160,500. Now that number's gonna change because they paid down the bond, and we don't know what the interest rates are, but we're talking to the treasurer, she said 4% in that area is a good target. We don't know. But, so the CPA committee had to take a vote to say, yes, if we're gonna take in $400,000 plus every year, plus state revenue, we will agree to dedicate a portion of our $400,000, somewhere in the area of, let's just say $150,000 a year, maybe a little less, to pay for the new lights and for the expanded use of Memorial Field. Again, whether it's a 15 or 20-year bond will be decided after town meeting, and if it's 1.7 million or 1.6 million will be decided after the bids come in.
Would this be the first time that they've done that?
It is, for Abington, yes. Several of the towns have done it, and coincidentally, and to our luck, the meeting that we went to the CPA to ask and talk to them about this was the month after that they had they went to basically a training session about, hey, you can use bonding to get some of your local projects done. So they were very familiar with it and very supportive of it.
Anyone have questions on that?
On the bonding?
Yeah.
No.
On baseball?
Questions on the rest of it, Greg?
Yep. Why do we need 3 fields?
3, what kind of fields?
2 baseball fields and a football field.
So the 2 baseball fields are what we have. So we offer a varsity and a JV. So to be able to continue to offer those programs, and our youth teams to be able to play, they essentially need the 2 fields, 2 full-size fields. The football, so the existing football field is essentially where the games are played, and then the other one is traditionally a practice field. So our entire youth program and our 3 high school teams share the practice field there.
They're all already existing though, Greg.
Yeah, no, I know. So the only reason why I'm saying it is just if you look at this diagram, you could get every single thing you wanted if you kind of get rid of that bottom field and made the varsity field the backfield. Right? You could get your fence that baseball players have no reason to be on a baseball field without, ever, especially if they're playing at a varsity level. Just like, can you imagine if there were no end zones? Just think about it.
Right.
Like, what would they do? What would you do? You just play a game. So, that's the only reason why I'm saying it. Not that I don't like the JV team. I'm sure my kid will play on the JV team. But my point is, can we stick that JVs? Can we stick the games and stuff other places in order to make 2 awesome fields that are exactly what all the kids want? Who, again, not for people that aren't playing at the highest level, but the kids that are, making those facilities better.
I think that the end result of this is now the boys, the varsity baseball field, which is in the bottom left on that photo, is the one that has the cement dugouts, and it has the new backstop, and it has completely, the infield was completely rebuilt last year.
Yes.
In 2009, we completely redid the outfield because of, it was a long story, the circus was in town and ruined the field. So the varsity baseball field is in prime condition, better condition than it's ever been, literally since I played in the 1980s. The JV baseball field will be brand new, and now we'll be out there and there'll be no conflict. And if there's a JV baseball player who's able to hit the ball far enough to put it in the pond, he'll be brought up to varsity anyhow. But it separates them and gives you all that green space now out on the eastern half of Memorial Field, which currently part of that is used, as Peter was just saying, for practice areas. There's actually 3 or 4 youth football teams and the varsity football team, the JV, the freshman football team, all try to share space, and they all try to keep moving the practice area so they don't rip up the outfield. Now, we show on this diagram where that second football field could fit. They don't play on that, but the park department will lay it out so they can practice kickoff returns and things like that. But they now have the ability to kind of move, and with using the lights that face that way, again, it's not game lights, but it's basically enough lights that you can practice till 7 or 8 o'clock at night. It just makes this a much more usable space.
It is possible, to your point, and it's not lost on me, that the new field in the top right corner could become the varsity
Like every
field.
single thing on that field is going to be brand new, and it might not have dugouts. And the reason why I suggested is because in your picture you show dugouts.
So it'll have,
It's a great sales pitch.
It's part of the
That's what I mean. So they're going to have.
above ground dugouts
Above,
in that way.
Yeah.
so that'll be a decision that will have.
Listen, I don't think we had a fence.
Greg's a
So
baseball guy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was too. It's not lost on me, and it shows like there's an outline of where a fence could be, and I could very well see down the road saying, why don't we move our varsity games to that area. I don't know how that'll go over with some people in the community, but this does open it up where we could create a fully fenced-in baseball field if that's what we wanted to do.
Yeah.
This proposal does not include the fence, but like in terms of opening up the possibilities, you could make a fully enclosed field out there. It would be, I mean, it wouldn't be a short left field.
I
it would be
think
shorter.
he, for 2 million, I think he can get a fence thrown in.
We'll make it happen.
That's what I mean. Like, I think it's possible. Like,
Yeah,
there's-
that's a decision the community would have to make, because right now, so if you put the fence there,
Right.
it would limit the amount of, essentially it's youth football that practices out there primarily.
Talking about the outfield fence.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you put a permanent fence in, but as I'm sure you know, there are temporary fences that you could
Yes.
So we have talked about the possibility of putting, on the JV field, putting an outfield fence along the tree line.
Yeah.
So you.
Where the water is.
Exactly. And again, and that fence can be 6 feet, 8 feet, 10 feet. You can make it what you want it to
Right.
be, depending on how long your foul line is. There's certain basic minimums, distances. I know way too much about this stuff now. Like for a varsity field, it's usually a 400-foot center field, and it's usually certain distances down the line each way, which we can now do with fencing if this project comes into play. And then, again, for the first time in 40 years, you would have all of the entire Memorial Field as a safe, usable place. It has never existed in a number of years because of the Dust Bowl. The poor quality of that corner there. This opens it up. And it's not just for baseball and it's not just for football. The baseball diamond will be built there.
Yeah.
But the amount of green space now makes it just open for all sorts of things. And I know like Abington celebrates, continue to expand some of their things. And we had the field days down at Memorial Field during the 300th birthday. There's a lot of things that this can be. I mean, this is a memorial and this is an iconic central part of our town, which I think a lot of people appreciate and invest in. There's been a lot of discussions, about locker rooms. The locker rooms, public bathrooms, we have to do something there, just under ADA regulations. But to Peter's point earlier, we want to have a lot of people involved in these decisions, because if we build a new locker room down at field level, we don't want to put it in a place which now blocks a entranceway or another proposed field use or another, I hate to say it, pickleball court, basketball court, hockey rink, whatever it is.
And then you'd lose the locker rooms are at field level.
We have to
For
think
me,
about all of it. Coming down the
pomp and
stairs.
circumstance of coming from the locker rooms down the stairs.
But all those conversations, we would have only after we do phase one.
Yep.
But you can't do any of it until this gets done. So I don't want to take a lot of your time, but that's the whole nexus of how this article relates to the CPA article.
Go ahead.
Quick question, who pays the electricity for those lights? Because I know that's going to be asked.
Is it school or?
I think it's the school.
Yeah, it's not hooked up to this building.
I think it's the school.
The Frollo building or.
So you'll be adding additional lighting, but it'll be more efficient, so they might not even see a
Oh, yeah.
different.
Much
cheaper.
I think it would be a significant savings in terms of the lighting.
You have
Even
any
with
idea what you
adding.
spend on that a year?
I do not offhand.
Felicia's shaking her head no.
I don't know. We can try to find that.
Any idea, like 10 grand, 20 grand, 100 grand?
I
No.
really don't. Actually have to, we have to even see if it's metered separately.
Probably not.
We'll take
I
a look.
would.
It might be a good thing to know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because if it is a bit, again, I don't know how much it costs, but if it is a big cost, then.
Yeah.
Either way, it's a good.
And just the amount of control you have over the lights, because you can actually, for a game, you have them on full throttle, 100%. For night before the 4th, you can dim them down. You can have half the lights on, and the athletic director can control it from his phone.
You can put like individual lights on, so they'll come up with like a security setting, so you can put it on where it doesn't light the whole complex, but it lights specific areas.
When they score a touchdown, they can flash.
Potentially.
Do you know that?
Yep.
I do know that.
That's the company that
Yeah.
Yeah,
really makes.
Musco.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do that.
If we're gonna do it, like, I don't know what the button to do that is, but I'm assuming it's.
It's gonna be on Pete's phone.
So, that's what it is, and I'm gonna step down as moderator for this article because I now have a conflict, because I'm supporting this. But Peter will be there at town meeting on April 1st, so that if any questions do come up, we can certainly answer them. And I want to thank the school department for all your support. They look out at their back window every day and see Memorial Field. And I also want to thank the kids in Abington, because, in fact, you're going to see them down there 2 weeks from now. The boosters get the kids down there to put some sweat equity in. Last year, they painted the entire 500-foot green wall and cleaned up all the gardens down there. They're gonna come back again this fall, clean up the softball field, clean up the baseball area, everything they do. The kids pitch in because they realize that the community's investing in it, so they kind of try to pay back what they can do. And it gives them a little bit of sweat in the game, so that when they see some kid throw a bottle down, they say, hey, pick it up, because I had to pick that up 2 weeks ago, and it works out well. It all comes around. All right?
Sarah, any questions? Anybody else questions on this one?
Thank you for your time.
Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Next up, Health Department. Let's talk about NIP. Talk about NIPS.
Before we talk about
I won't take it
NIPS,
personally.
I have a quick question.
I might need a nip now.
I was playing.
I have a quick, I know, whatever, quick question. Tell me anything else. If-
Yes.
I just wanted to ask real quick, because I've been asked since the information went out about, you know, what we accept and what we don't accept, a new updated version of it. Why do we not accept shredded paper? I'm sure there's a reason, either clogs the machine or it does something, but that question's been asked, so I said that I would get the answer from the horse's mouth, so to speak, at my next meeting, so.
Yep, so, the shredded paper jams the sorters, and it gets mixed in with the plastics and contaminates them. Shredded paper can be thrown out in the trash, that's fine, and it's also, you can put it in your compost. In fact, when the compost site opens, I would encourage people to bring the shredded paper to just throw in our big pile. Makes great compost.
Very good, thank you.
No problem.
So if they're composting at home,
Yeah, and we do sell earth machines, home composters too.
So,
So,
Chris, welcome. We're actually here to talk about the stable fee.
stable fee, okay.
So just to let you know, a few questions came up right off the bat with that. One was, how many stables do we actually have in town?
Yeah, so this is where, just a little bit of background on that. So as part of our Public Health Excellence Grant, our health department was tasked with doing a capacity assessment survey. And while we were going through that, lo and behold, Massachusetts general law requires every single local board of health to permit stables in town, private or commercial. And Abington has no regulations on the book. It's very simple for the Board of Health. Well, no, it's not simple, but the Board of Health can make the regulations on their own. However, for whatever reason, Massachusetts general law, while it requires the boards to do the regulation, it specifically requires the fee to be set at town meeting
Okay.
and not to be more than $40.
So that makes a lot more sense as to why this is on there.
Yeah. Long story short, the board is currently reviewing whether they want to do simply stable regs or combine animal regulations with that. So there are no regs on the book yet, but they figured since town meeting was coming up, it would make sense to just get the fee out of the way.
Yep.
To the best of my knowledge, I believe we have maybe 4 or 5 private stables in town that have been here for quite some time. No anticipation of new stables being built. So we're looking at basically, even when they pass the regulations, we're gonna be grandfathering whoever's here already. So I believe what they were looking for with the fee is a one-time $40 fee, which includes me going out and do the inspection, issuing a permit, and then that permit would be good for the length of whoever owns that
Length
property.
of ownership.
Yeah, it wouldn't transfer, but I at least can't reasonably go to somebody who's had a stable for 40 years and say, you now have to pay $40 a year, just because we're catching up on something. So that was the thought process with that.
So it says no more than $40.
Yeah, the state is weirdly specific about that.
So it could be $0.
It could be, yeah, and the only reason they set it at 40, again, because they were looking to do it a one-time.
And who's they?
The board, yeah, I'm just the agent of the board. For the initial one going out, there would be some paperwork, there would be plans to review, I would actually have to go out into the field and inspect it, per whatever the regulations are set, which will probably be boilerplate regulations. So there's some time and manpower involved in that.
So basically
Yeah, so-
just covers that cost
Yeah,
of
So
the
part,
person.
yeah, part of our discussion about it was how frequent was the fee one time?
yeah, so I
Makes it
think they
better.
specifically put that.
Does
in.
the cost to the town of you having to go out to inspect it and
Yeah, that's why they would.
certify it actually get covered by the fee?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in that case,
Or would we lose money on creating the fee?
in this case, I mean,
Not a lot of money, obviously.
yeah,
but-
I don't think it would be a heavy lift for me to go out and look at a stable.
Okay.
You know, if somebody was building something from scratch, it would be a lot more
Yeah.
involved. And when they do those regulations, there could be something separate for new construction, but.
Okay.
Nobody's probably moving in and building Yellowstone around here.
I would think not, you know, you never know, but.
We gotta raise cows for a dowry or something.
What defines a stable? Yeah, I'm sure that came up.
It's any structure that houses animals or livestock, but like if you,
Because I'm thinking horses.
yeah, so it's primarily horses. It would also include llamas. There's a lot of towns, what they do with this is they have a barn regulation, and that covers, you know, if you have more than 5 dogs, if the town's regulated, that's considered a barn. So stables, that's, the board is kind of in the process of defining that, but it's primarily, I think the ones we have are for horses.
So this one, it only addresses horses or it addresses?
Yeah, yeah. Specifically, yeah, stable. So what, I mean, whatever is defined as a stable, but again, because they don't have those regulations written up yet, I don't have a,
Could be goats.
yeah,
Well, so will they have them written up before town meeting?
probably not. I can have them come back with the draft that they're looking at, but
So potentially the town could vote yes on this and then the regulations would come out after?
yeah, yeah. And that was just, their idea was if they get through the regulations at some point this year, rather than waiting to the next town meeting, they just get the fee through.
So I'm not a huge proponent of more fees and more government in general.
Yeah.
So I just don't love the idea that it's not written ahead of time. Because it could cover a whole lot of things, but the way it's worded, I immediately thought it was just horses.
Yeah, so I can tell you, in addition to this, what the board is currently looking at, based off of Whitman's regulations, is stables being specifically for horses, and then a barn reg, which would, they're looking at a fee of like $5 for that, and that is simply for the purpose of us having an inventory of what livestock is in people's yards. Not that we want to regulate it, or the board wants to regulate it, but just knowing what we have, so if there's an emergency situation, there's a lot of people with ducks and chickens. If there's an outbreak of avian flu, that empowers our department to contact people and say, you need to get your animals in, you need to be checking them. Right now, there's a lot of backyard farmers in Abington, and we literally have absolutely no idea what people have for animals. So I would think anything outside of horses and stables would fall under that and would be a separate thing. And the last meeting, they were discussing just a $5 processing fee.
Is there any,
There's a lot of chickens in our neighborhood.
Yeah, there's a lot in mine too.
is there any penalty for not having the,
There could be one built, I think in the model regs they were looking at, they did specify that's penalty for being unpermitted, but there was no fee set.
no, is there a penalty for us, the town of
for not having-
Abington, for not having
a
a
stable.
stable fee?
Going by Chapter 3, Section 155, it looks like these rules were put in place in 1895, so nobody's come after us yet. But this
So
is
if it-
one of several things
If
that we
it
thought
doesn't
of.
pass, we're probably okay for, until the next town meeting.
Yeah, and then, yeah, they would probably just come back.
So in 1895, the state said that we need to check on stables?
Apparently, yeah. But so a similar situation happened is, and this one blew my mind
Probably a
is.
lot more stables in 1890.
Yeah, than there are
For sure,
now.
there was.
That
Um,
wasn't
Lot
$40.
lot less cars.
It wasn't.
We were also, every town
If it
and
was
city
up
in
to
Massachusetts is
$40,
responsible for
something
permitting
really
funeral
different.
directors. We don't permit the funeral homes, but we were required to permit the funeral directors, and we hadn't been doing that. And then when I looked into the state regs for funeral directors are supposedly not able to get a state license unless they're permitted locally. So, we fixed that. But, like I said, the board.
Same question, was there a penalty to you, to
No.
not having it? Like, no one's checking that? I'm just,
They are beginning to now. Part of what this Public Health Excellence Grant is the State Department of Public Health has decided that, you know, because every municipality has different rules, there's a lot of inequity amongst communities, and they want to raise the bar and just have a straight standard across the board.
so if you have more of these things, more of these, are following more of the rules that are already on the books and I guess, does that, is there any bonus to that? Like, that you can qualify for a grant, or you, like, is there a,
I think at this stage, what they're looking at is accreditation.
okay.
So that would go towards that. There's nothing set up for that yet. This Public Health Excellency is in its, we're just going into our second year, so it's still
Okay.
being fleshed out. That's it. And I don't know why the law says that the board can make the regulations and town meeting has to decide on the fee, but that's what's written.
Other questions?
Can we make them come up with the wording for a town meeting? Because again, this is, in my opinion, like a waste of time. Not saying what you were doing, meaning just do whatever. If there's 4 people that have stables, I don't think this is going to turn into a stable town. But the wording, at least for me, it sounds like him as well. Like, you just got to put something up there to vote on. If it's literally nothing, I don't know what we'd be voting on. We wouldn't even have wording. So wouldn't we have to have like a different?
Well, you have an article in front of you, and that's what, within the motion, there may be some nuance to it, but that's what we would be asking the voters to vote on, and that's what we're asking, or they're asking, the Board of Health is asking you to make a recommendation on. You can defer to the Board of Health, you can recommend against it. But
Voters are gonna
so-
ask, like, what are the regulations?
if
Yeah,
the
so-
regulations aren't ready, we could always pass over it until the fall.
So I think this is probably more to Scott. The wording that we have currently in the article says, vote if the town will amend the animals bylaw to add to Article 3, Section 11-10, stables as follows. Every owner of a stable shall license it with the Board of Health. The fee for such license shall be $40. License shall be valid until the sale or transfer of the property. So we already have a section in there related to
Animals?
animal bylaw.
Yeah, currently the only thing in there is dogs and pasteurizing of livestock. So they just, that's where it would fit to add it in. I mean, I can say if the definition of stables changed to include anything other than horses, then they would be limiting themselves to the exact same thing. And I believe the idea for every other type of livestock would be just a $5 processing fee and having an inventory. So, I mean, I can't speak for the board, but I don't think it's in their interest to define stables other than horses. But I get your point, yeah. They had originally anticipated on having the regs ready. Their next meeting is Monday, but they've actually tabled the animal regs because there's a couple of other pressing things coming up.
So is this kind of like the cart before the horse? I couldn't.
It's like,
It's late, we've been here for 2 hours.
Stop horsing around.
That was.
So as it reads and as I understood it, it's horses. And you would agree with that for the moment?
I would, yeah.
Okay. But there is a possibility that the board could be like, let's add chickens in there too. Or let's add whatever, without changing the wording.
Yeah.
Well, they will be able to amend their regs throughout the year at any
No
given
matter
point in time without going back to town meeting.
Unless we say no to this.
No.
Well, no.
No, to be quite honest with you, actually,
They can amend
Right, 'cause this is
their
just-
This is just a fee.
Either way,
Fee.
there just won't be a fee.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
actually, to
So-
Matt's argument, if it didn't get on there, then the town would be losing money because I would have to go out and inspect it, and we wouldn't be
Anyways, because
collecting
you're
it.
required to.
Yeah, and we wouldn't be collecting that back, so.
children will be on here in less than 6 months.
What's that?
Children? They'll throw children in.
I don't think you can keep them in a stable.
I try.
I'll tell you, I don't, there's some
definitely
instances where I don't mind the town losing money. When it's, because it's the town losing money or we're charging this guy $40 just because, hey, we're gonna enact this new thing.
Well, it's not new.
Just to check.
Right.
So it
It's new
is
for
certainly
us.
a balance.
Be new for us. And I think there might be some building regs that cover part of it. I guess the good thing for us is where we haven't been permitting stables. I'm sure that we have excellent people at Abington that take care of their horses, but we don't know for sure. And this would enable me legally to go out and check to make sure it's up to code, that everything that needs to be there is there, and
Yeah.
protect us in the future should somebody decide to buy a piece of property and build a stable.
So let's just say there was an issue on the, what's the name of the police, not the MSPCA,
The ACO, the animal control?
Yes, thank you. No,
No?
above that, so,
Peter.
no. That come in, and if you've got 30 dogs and you're hoarding them.
Oh, yeah,
then
like the SPCA or, there is an agency.
The
yes.
MSPCA, like the police aspect of it, there is a, so, does that come into play at all? Like if you're not permitting and you're not checking, can you
Yeah,
be
right.
held liable for, can the town be held liable for not,
The issue here is not whether we're going to go forward. We have something that we're mandated to do, so he's going to do it. Just because we haven't done it doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing it. That's the saying of we've always done it that way doesn't really fly. The only issue here is whether we're going to codify it and charge for it. But going forward, we know we have a responsibility to do something. We're certainly not going to not do it.
right?
Well, and define it clearly as we.
I recommend that they get some really clear regulations.
Yes.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, the chair might be better able to answer that. And I apologize, I didn't bring a copy of the model regs, but like I said, it's just models there. They could change it. Usually, when the board is looking at any sort of regulations, definitions are usually pretty hard and fast. We went through that with body art. Somebody wanted to change some definitions, and it's not a smart idea for Abington to define something differently than the rest of the world, but,
Yeah, because
I can get back to you with that.
I certainly don't want to look at this as like a revenue generator, because
Yeah.
it's taking money from townspeople.
For people.
Yeah, I mean, I might feel differently personally if we had commercial stables, but these are
Sure.
private stables.
Yeah.
People aren't out making money, they're just taking care of the horses.
Yeah.
I have nothing,
Greg?
unless we want to talk about the nips.
I did see two of them up in front of town hall.
Oh, I live on
If
Sugar
if there was a
Street.
return fee on them, you
Industrial
wouldn't be
time.
seeing them.
I wouldn't have picked them up, but
Do you know
except to
if those
clean
were
up.
purchased in Abington?
I couldn't tell. One was Jack Daniels.
Oh, that was definitely from
It's
Rockland.
definitely
That was-
Whitman.
I can tell you the board is, I think it's gonna be on their agenda, Monday to discuss whether or not they wanna rescind that, warrant article. I can't predict what way they're gonna go on it, but they are gonna discuss it, so.
If they do continue with it, can they actually get some real data?
Not,
Right.
not by town meeting,
Oh, really?
I doubt it.
I think they can probably get some stats. I remember that at least one of the residents that came in and requested that, ban had some data with him. There's only maybe 3 or 4 communities, I think, in Massachusetts.
Like the
that
data
are-
that's interesting is how many bottles do we find on the ground that are purchased in Abington? That's
well,
probably the
yeah,
only
that-
data set that's important.
That's-
So, and just so we're clear, they can never come up with that, so it's like
Yeah,
unless
that-
somebody can, I don't know.
You survey people.
Do you know if there's any lobbying for, instead of banning, to try and get a return on the?
I know it was being discussed at the state level. I don't know where we're at with that. But they've been kicking around. I think they were looking at a ban and at a deposit at some point. With these things that fall under the health departments, the state generally tends to allow the individual municipalities to decide, and then once it starts to create a wave, then the state will go. Like, we'll probably see a statewide plastic bag ban within the next 5 years.
It's a thin plastic bag.
Yeah, it's like 0.5 milliliters or something.
You gotta hand it to them. It's quick, they came up with that alternative.
Yep.
That everybody threw away.
You know, my wife saves them.
She's in the minority.
She still gets more, she doesn't take them back to the store. And they're just in my pantry.
Any other questions? All right, Chris, thank you so much.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, next up is reviewing warrant articles. Snow and ice, do we have or before we even get to that, how's free cash?
No updates yet. I did send out an email to our rep, and I'll let you know when I hear anything.
Where do you think the town is?
Do we think that we'll have something by next week?
I hope so.
Because if we don't, we can't really make recommendations.
No, totally up a lot of articles, for sure.
Yeah, so, all right. Okay, so snow and ice we can't deal with until free cash. Do we
As far as the number goes,
have a current number?
there was some activity on this week's warrant, so I'll wait for that to go through and I'll tabulate it for next time.
Okay. Prior year bills,
Yeah, hold on.
do we want to hold off till next week, or do we think we're not gonna change between this week and next week?
We can hold off. I mean, no one's brought me anything new, so that number is correct. I do have the details here.
Well, I think we probably want to make sure that 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 Griffin's Dairy number is correct. I believe it is, but I would like to double check and actually find the bill in your
Yeah.
office.
So I have the first 2 invoices there. One's for AJ equipment repair for the health department. That one's for trash carts. The other one's for a fire department bill for some apparatus that they use.
That's a grand total of,
15,276.
okay, sorry, I was looking at both, but the bottom one is fund deficits,
Right,
so
yeah.
don't look at that.
So the health department got something repaired for $10,856.
They bought trash carts, replacement trash carts, I believe.
Okay, so the number we had last week is correct, 15,276. The odds of that changing between this week and next week.
It's
and
possible.
It's possible, but I think, given where we're at in our timeline, if something does come in between now and town meeting, we can always reopen
The night, yeah.
to discuss before town meeting.
Okay.
So I would certainly entertain a motion on Article 2.
Sorry.
Which is payment of a prior year's bill to see if the
Yes.
town will vote
Motion
to
to-
transfer available funds, the sum of 15,276 to pay outstanding bills for the prior year.
Motion to recommend approval of Article 2.
So motion, is there a second?
Is it free cash?
Second.
Seconded.
It's from free cash, not available funds.
Available funds, it says, the sum of.
Andrew said yes to
Yeah.
free cash.
Your motion.
So we're gonna
Free cash
change
is
that
available.
wording to available funds, yeah, free cash is
Motion will be
available.
from free cash, though, right?
Most likely. Yeah, I would say, yeah.
Sorry to get it.
So, wait, because I made a motion. Do we not know where it's coming from?
It should be free cash.
Yeah. It's available funds in that, when it's in the actual motion, we'll probably say free cash, but for the purposes of the warrant article,
Okay,
available funds is what we would normally have in there.
yes.
And the only reason I know that is because I cut and pasted from every past
Right,
warrant.
right, but
Because we're not gonna borrow.
Correct. Any
We're not
further,
gonna borrow.
any further discussion on Article 2? The motion is to recommend. All those in favor?
I,
All those opposed, abstaining, it is unanimous. All right, Article 3 we've already taken up, Article 4 we've already taken up, Article 5 is the budget, which we cannot act on tonight. Article 6 is capital, which we cannot act on tonight. 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11 we've already dealt with. Article 12, now we get back to, actually, is this,
This would be a free cash article,
okay.
so we should probably wait.
So we were waiting on free cash for this one. This was matching grant funding. Did we have, remind me, what were we looking at as a number on this one?
Around 50K.
Okay. So given capital and others where this is not a outstanding bill that we need to pay, I think we should wait until we know what we're doing with free cash and how much we have to work with. Does anyone disagree? All right, so. Alright, sorry. Real quick, look at my notes.
Sean, at the end of Article 13, I didn't add part of the planning board
I just, we,
today.
and there's a few that don't have, or any other action relative there too, that I gotta
All right. So Article 12, we're not taking action yet. Article 13 was the zoning article for the MBTA overlay district, which the last 2 weeks we have said we were waiting for wording on that. And I'm trying to remember what wording we were waiting on. Scott, do you?
There are just some
Language.
amendments, and we were waiting for approval from Attorney General, but I think we were gonna ask, and I think I did ask Liz to pop in here next week.
Okay,
The wording just got issued today, so.
okay.
That's the MBTA?
Yes, it's for like the commuter rail state, around the commuter rail station. There's a lot of rules that we have to adhere to ensure that we can get grants and things like that. And it's just zoning for things.
Right.
And then those things, anyone that would apply for them would have to go through the regular zoning process. But it's just creating the zoning the state requires. All right, the other two zoning articles, 14 and 15, we have moved to defer to zoning board, or the planning board. I always mess that up.
You know, those articles 13, 14, 15 might be reversed, but number 13 becomes 15.
Article 16, we already took up. Article 17 we took up and might be rescinded. Article 18, stable license. Anyone have a motion for Article 18, which we just discussed with our health agent?
My motion will come out of personal feelings, so,
That's allowed.
I guess.
So, can I get a motion so that we can discuss?
Motion to approve Article 18, stable license.
Is there a second?
Sure.
Second from Greg. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
Discussion, so as far as the Finance Committee is concerned, the economic impact to the town is at
$160.
is at best somewhere between $160 and $200 stretched over
One time.
stretched over a period of many years. So we're not exactly talking about a financial impact to the town.
And aren't we paying the agent a salary anyways?
We are paying the agent a salary, yes.
So
We're not
within
paying
those,
the health agent hourly or mile by mile.
So,
Yeah, I
right,
mean,
so it would be done within the hours of
Like working hours,
working hours.
it could prevent the health agent from getting to other things that might be more important, but it also might.
You could do one every 3 months.
But I mean, it's not gonna prevent him from doing it, the $40.
And
For
so,
4 residents that, you
He's
know,
going to
would
do
probably,
yeah.
he's going to do it
Yeah.
anyways,
He's
no matter
going-
whether this
he's-
right,
flies or
whether
not.
you
Right.
get
He's going to do
$40
it.
for it or not.
Right,
concern,
it's a done deal.
so the concerns are, there's a state regulation that requires that we do this.
Doesn't require us to pay,
It
to
does-
charge $40.
It
Gives you the
requires
ability.
us to set a fee. As we discussed, the fee could be zero.
I mean,
It,
you can set a fee up to $40.
yes. Or, I believe his wording was that you have to set a fee. It could be anywhere from 0 to $40. The state certainly does not appear to be spending its time enforcing this particular.
It's been since 1865, nobody's
this
checked on us.
particular Law, this particular aspect of Mass General Law.
I'm just saying, when was the town formed?
So
Right off the top of your head.
about half of the lifespan of the town.
Alright.
In general, I'm just kind of disappointed that they maxed out the amount that they could.
I'm gonna take leave of you folks, I'll check on your votes tomorrow.
Thanks, Scott.
Might still be here, but I.
Thank you.
And as a whole, I agree with you. I think something that is this minimal.
There are 6 people that are gonna care about this.
Well, there's also an aspect of slippery
Slope.
on this.
No, I know, and
Right,
so that's,
yeah.
that's the only thing, so that, the reason that I'm voting no is because we don't have words. If we had words, that would be a little bit more that you could read them, but if, since last week, or maybe the week before, when we discussed it, it was about a stable. Then he said a barn today,
Yeah.
then it was
Well,
about land, and it's okay, I'm just
To
saying,
clarify what Chris said was that there are other surrounding towns that handle this as part of a barn
yeah,
regulation, not that that is what we are doing.
but I thought he said they're talking about a barn
He
is
said that
also.
they are talking about potentially also having a
Yes,
barn.
so that's why it's hard to vote on something when it's not there, because it could include, again, I know it's not, but it could include a garage. Because,
So-
hey, you know what, everybody's got a garage, $40, let's put that on.
So I don't think.
I'm not saying they're gonna do it.
I don't think that and the town moderator, who is also an attorney, might be able to help answer this. I don't think that amending the animal section of the town's bylaws could include
Well, shed.
garage.
A shed.
I think he's,
I think
I know
I'm
what you're
giving
saying
I'm
though.
giving it more of like,
There.
General.
if you don't see, if you don't actually have
But
the word.
I do agree that not having defined wording around this is concerning. However, as stated, the Board of Health can change the wording at any time during the year, regardless of what town meeting.
Well, and
votes on
that's a great point, because if we vote to say, yeah, let's charge $40 for this, and right now it's just horses, then any time during the year, that can be added on, chicken coops and other things can be added to that. Could be. We're opening it up for that, and that's my concern. We shouldn't look at this as a revenue generator, and certainly,
And the inspections are gonna be done
right.
regardless,
I just,
during the
if it was
salary that's already
$0,
paid.
I would say sure. But I don't think it's appropriate to put that on it, because it could
We
evolve
still-
into more.
We also still have next week, so what, if there's stuff that like is up in the air, if we have to do
We
it,
do
do
have
it
next week, but it also did not sound like there's gonna be any change from the Board of Health then next week on this, so.
Any thoughts on it, Sarah?
I think the regulation should be in place before we can.
Before we can vote on what the fee
Before we
is.
vote on it, yeah, or we defer to the Board of Health and let them speak to what the regulation may or may not be, what the definition of a stable is, and how they arrive at the decision to
Yeah,
select
and that's-
$40 as a fee.
That's where my mind has been, is without a definition of this, it's hard to recommend yes to this.
If it stays as is,
But-
I'm gonna get up at town meeting.
But deferring to the Board of Health partly allows them to get up and explain what this is and why.
I think they'll get up and explain where it is
They're-
and why
Yeah,
anyways.
they're going to get up and explain why either way, but it gives less of a voice to the concerns of the committee if we defer to the Board of Health on this.
I don't mind deferring,
So,
like,
I'm
like
not
I
in
said, I'm
favor
gonna
of
get up
deferring.
and-
I'm also not in favor of the fee.
Right.
Just because if you're paying someone double, we're charging a fee to cover the cost of something that's already covered. We're already paying the agent to do the inspections, it's just they didn't know that they had to be doing the inspections, and now they know, and so now they need to do it. I'm not in favor of charging a fee for that, because we're covering that cost already.
Kinda sounds like
well,
trash.
I mean, there are inspections that the health agent does, like restaurant inspections and things, that there are fees for.
Mhm.
Yeah, if this was, like you
So
said,
that's
this was
not,
commercial.
that's not something that's completely outside of.
Right, again, that's a commercial type operation of business. You've got a handful of people sitting at home that have
four or five
horses, which are very expensive to veterinary bills. It's just,
Yes,
it's an
they are.
expensive thing to have. So to whack another $40 on those 5 people in town for something from, that says we're allowed to charge up to that much, so something that's already being covered, the cost is
Yeah,
already being
I
covered.
do understand trying to adhere with state laws, but I also feel like this is, like, setting an actual fee for this is not necessary.
However long we've spoken about it, it's not.
Probably much more time than will be spent on it at town meeting.
So I would like to.
Can you imagine if 6 people show up and they're just like flipping out?
I would like to rescind my recommendation for
Barbara has
approval.
rescinded her recommendation. Greg, do you?
I second that.
Rescind the second?
Yep.
Greg rescinds his second. Is there a new motion?
I would make a motion to
Pass over.
pass over Article 18. And I would hope that you would,
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I would hope that you would speak to it, Matt, at town
Absolutely.
meeting. That
I guess you're back.
Appreciate that.
I'm sure the Board of Health will
Res-
speak to
resident Dan Eddy.
it as well.
And the Board of Health will definitely speak to it as well.
But just
Um,
the sense of the board anyways,
Yeah.
at least.
Any further discussion? Sarah? There's a motion is to pass over Article 18. All those in favor? All those opposed, abstained, it is unanimous. Right, Article
I'm reading a
19.
lot about stables right now.
Are you I figured that's where you were going.
$5 a day penalty for failure to abide by the law. And if you're within 200 feet of a church, there's another law that applies. You have to get a permission from the church unless you.
For the stable?
For a stable, unless the stable was already in place
Before the church.
No,
Just a church.
Well,
before
didn't the
May
stable come
17th,
before the church
1891.
in general? Like, you know,
Was born in
in
the
a
stable.
biblical way?
This is one of those unbelievable things.
All right, Article 19, the senior veteran tax work-off, we recommended already. Article 20, accrued liabilities and compensated absence fund, we're waiting for free cash. Unemployment reserve fund, Article 21, we're also waiting for free cash. The charter update, we were waiting for wording.
We recommend to defer to the charter review.
Did we recommend to
committee.
defer? Let me double check my notes on that.
That's
probably
what I
missed-
have in my
I
notes.
probably missed that in my notes from last week. That's my bad. Sorry for the delay. Yes, we did vote to defer. That's my bad for not catching that. Making better notes this time. Article 23, let me make sure I have the right notes on this one. Griffin's Dairy Well. The notes that I had was that there's more to do, we don't have the numbers, and it will eventually come from free cash. Do we have any updates? Andrew, we have no updates.
And we don't have free cash
Town
number.
moderator know of any updates on that? And we don't have the free cash. And our overall recommendation on this was that it was something that should go back to the Community Preservation Committee, since they funded the rest of the
Mm.
well and project, so. Do we want to wait until next week for a final recommendation on that, or do we want to take any action tonight?
Say
I'd
wait
say
till next week.
All right, wait till next week it is. Article 24, the St. Patrick's Day Parade, we recommended. Article 25, the DPW Gas Island move, we recommended. The Article 26, close fund deficits. Now we can go back to your spreadsheet.
Less than $2,000.
So it's $1,700, which were the numbers that we were waiting for. Does anyone want to make a motion?
And that's coming from free cash also.
Yes.
Motion to recommend Article 26 to close the fund deficits.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on Article 26? We've discussed it the last couple of weeks, but.
What is this?
So there are times where, say we have a grant and it's a reimbursement basis, so we'll submit bills that we've already paid for to be reimbursed by who's ever giving us the grant money. Sometimes they'll disallow the reimbursement, but the expense already happened, so we're left holding the bill.
Gotcha. So what's the special town meeting equipment gift?
That is a gift fund from, it seems like a long time ago.
Oh, it's a gift fund, okay.
There's a $75 overdraft from that, so I figured we just close it. It's small dollars.
You could tie it into the stables. Charge
I'm confused by the grand
twice.
total on there, now that I'm looking at the screen.
Oh,
So-
did I mess up my
Yeah.
plans?
Yeah, because one of them is 1,610, and the grand total was 1,600 and something else, but we've got a 700, a 500, a 700.
37.
So $3,684.37.
Let's save that.
Any further discussion? The motion is to recommend Article 26. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Abstaining? It is recommended. Article 27, we voted on last week. That is the Trash Pickup Enterprise Fund. Article 28, Memorial Field.
Sorry, what was your vote on 27?
27 was vote to recommend.
It was not unanimous.
It was,
Is that?
It was
it was
not
a,
unanimous.
it was a tight vote.
Just a 5-3.
One of the tightest votes since I've been on the committee.
And what happens at a 4-4?
It does not pass.
Rock, paper, scissors.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't
Solves
pass because you have to have more votes in favor.
That meeting
Makes
was
sense.
still votes, but.
Right. But our vote would be in the,
We were just what you had.
be in the negative,
Yeah.
right?
So Article 28 is Memorial Field, which we have just had a good long discussion about tonight. Is there
Make a motion to recommend approval for Article 28.
motion to recommend approval? Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Barbara. Any further discussion on the Memorial Field borrowing for Phase 1? Borrowing from CPC funds, essentially committing the Community Preservation Committee to making installment payments on these improvements.
We just really need to make sure it has some sort of a fence. And I might have an idea on where the layout, I think I have a better layout, just letting you know.
Okay.
I think they would be willing to work with you, Greg.
Sponsored by Magellan Jets.
Might get a really nice fence.
Get sponsored by Stellar.
Any further actual discussion on this one? All those in favor of recommending Article 28? Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, abstaining, it is recommended. And Article 29, revoking the opioid fund that is no longer necessary, we voted on last week and recommended. And that takes us through all of our articles. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 articles that are as of yet unvoted on. The principal of those are budget and capital, and almost everything else kind of falls out from capital and free cash. We have meetings tentatively scheduled. We have a meeting tentatively scheduled for Tuesday of next week. We have a meeting for Wednesday of next week. Do we believe that we need both of those meetings to finish the budget? Where will we be at by Tuesday of next week and by Wednesday of next week?
I believe the health insurance vote is coming on Tuesday, so we should have impacts after that. So,
And then who did we invite to, who was Scott saying that he invited?
He said he wanted Liz to come next week on the MBTA zoning.
But is that
wording.
Tuesday or
He did
Wednesday?
not specify.
Do you know, Amber?
What do you think, chairs?
It's not in the budget.
Well, if she's the only one that we,
She was the
Right,
only,
that's-
she was the only one.
that's it. We don't have anyone else to come before us. We had no other questions that required anyone else to come before us.
Correct. Everything else is really, so free cash, free cash, free cash, MBTA wording, free cash, budget, and free cash. So it's really all free cash or the budget outside of the zoning article.
All right, I think we can get it done in one night. Does anyone think that they have any big discussions that they need to have on any of the, like, the only thing I can think of that would be the budget?
I think that both the budget and the free cash discussions are going to be big and could take a while. But, and they're kind of part and parcel of the same thing, and I don't know what the difference will be between Tuesday and Wednesday night.
No, we were going to meet Tuesday and Wednesday.
Right. No, that's
so-
what I'm saying.
I
If
see what you're
we
saying.
do
We
stuff
try to-
Tuesday, I don't think anything's going to change between Tuesday and Wednesday. And I do think, like you're saying, we'll have time to cover everything in one night.
I feel, unless anyone,
They are big
someone might
discussions,
have,
but I
feel
I-
strongly
I'd rather
about.
stay later than come and see you guys 2 days in a row.
Well, now that we know how
It's-
to-
So I
Now
said-
you're
I
making
said
it,
that we're gonna
now
bring-
it's personal, right?
That was super,
Also, there's some
super
people
aggressive.
available on, Wednesday.
Yes,
So we-
definitely more people
more different.
available Wednesday,
Okay.
Yeah,
so.
I was just being funny, guys.
And so, but, so we don't really, no one's feeling like they are,
Yeah,
have a totally different,
I think that we've been able to get through enough of the other articles that we can because what's left are essentially, like, so the zoning article, we have a pretty good idea of what the zoning article is and the likelihood of us deferring to the planning board on that is strong. We're just waiting for wording before we actually take a vote on that. So Liz will come and give us an update on that, but I don't think that that's gonna be particularly lengthy and contentious.
right, and then we'll have a discussion about it, and then
and
we'll
then-
decide what to do, and then basically it's
And
the
then
free
it's
cash,
basically free cash determining which things, which,
certain
and
numbers,
there
specific
might- there
numbers
might-
plugged in.
there might be an advantage to having that discussion on Tuesday with the possibility of providing feedback that gets worked on for Wednesday to make it different. But if we aren't gonna know what the free cash is, then it's
Try to get in
really,
touch.
it's really hard for,
Yeah.
I mean, it's not on you, you're waiting the way that
Something
we
we
are.
can reopen day of.
So, it's certainly something we could reopen day of.
So maybe we just stick to Wednesday night then. I don't feel like we're in a dire situation where, you know, we weren't sure how far along we'd be.
Yeah, I do think to the previous discussion and the discussion we've had a little bit with the moderator about the date of town meeting. Town meeting being later would help us in this regard where we don't know our number for free cash and we're 7 days away
Crunching,
from,
yeah.
7 days away from having to publish, having to make recommendations so they can be published
Yeah.
before town meeting, but
And I think we're having a warrant review meeting on the afternoon of Wednesday, the 20th, with the town council and the financial people. So if you do meet that Wednesday night, we can also update you.
On the
if
wording.
anything-
well, we're definitely meeting Wednesday night. The question is if we're meeting Tuesday and Wednesday or just Wednesday.
all you-
I'm in favor of just Wednesday at this point, and
Anyone feel like we need Tuesday? Greg?
No.
Sarah? Okay, then Wednesday it is.
I have a question about the statement thing.
That is allowed.
And Sean, I might ask you this question. So I'm just trying to think about what would happen, because we're doing the inspections regardless. And the vote is really just to apply a fee to it. So if the town says no to the fee, could they being the Board of Health, during town hall, and I feel like I've seen this happen before, where they change the wording right there to $0, for example. They'd be able to
You
do
can
that.
amend,
Yes, you
you
can
can
amend on
amend
the floor,
it to,
as long as it's within the scope, and usually lowering a fee is within the scope.
Okay. You know, does it have to be the board that makes a motion for that, or?
no, it could be a
And
citizen.
is it a motion?
Yeah, someone would make you guys would make a motion, someone
So
has
right
to make a
now-
motion to approve the article.
So right now, our recommendation is to pass over.
Right.
Someone could revise or make a separate motion to amend the article.
To approve the article.
To approve the article, but amended to change the number of the.
And then you have to first vote on
You have to
the
vote on the negative
negative first,
No,
the affirmative first.
we always
The-
have to take the positive motion
Okay,
first.
Okay.
So if the motion from the town, from the finance committee is to pass over, that's a negative motion.
Yeah.
If someone stands up and says, I'd like to support this, I'd like to make a motion to approve it, and they can either say as written, or, but with the amendment that it be $20, $1, whatever it is,
A nickel.
then that
Absence.
motion would be the first thing we vote on, and either that goes up or down. If it,
Could we as a committee make the motion here, or recommendation to amend and lower? Or
Yes.
no?
you could, your recommendation as printed in the warrant could say, you recommend to support this article, but with a lower fee of blank,
Yeah.
if you wanted to do that. The article will stay as printed,
Right.
$40. Town meeting will make the final decision. The fee for such license shall be established in a town by town meeting action, unless you have a city council, et cetera, et cetera. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a question, I don't know that it's appropriate for us to do that, if that Board of Health recommended that number. As a private citizen, I might practice my motion.
I can help you if that's what you decide to do.
Thank you.
And I'm gonna try to clean up the warrant with some of your recommendations you put in there, and it's my understanding, under each article, there's gonna be the finance committee recommendation, the town manager's comment, and the board of selectmen's vote whether they support or don't support the article.
That's new.
Yeah.
On each one?
On each one, I believe. And I think theirs is gonna be more abbreviated, that selectmen 5-0 support, selectmen 3-2 against, or whatever. And you guys can either, we don't usually report the finance committee's vote in the recommendation, you have every right in the world to do it, or you can just say it. Or, I forget which article you said was a 4-3 or whatever.
Yeah.
If Matt stands up and says, we recommend approval, you could stand up and say, I was one of the people who voted against this, and explain why, like any other resident.
I think historically with the tag ones we've mentioned that it was.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of people watch you guys at
It's
home.
appropriate.
Yeah, I think when you say, this was debated by the finance committee, and it was a 5-4 vote, or a 6-3 vote, or unanimous, that all of those, that information weighs, helps people weigh the vote. I don't know how we're doing the charter yet. I'm suggesting that they have a separate handout with the charter provisions, and we'll have a separate handout with the budget. So it's just a little bit easier for people to follow along.
Is there any way to get that out to the folks before?
Yes, well, all of them. The warrant, the charter, I gotta talk with Rick Collins. I was supposed to call him today, and I just got hung up on things. In the budget, when that's finalized, it'll be posted online, and then we'll have handouts available at the door. And again, it's April 1st, it's 7 o'clock, it's at the auditorium, and we request everyone arrive there at least 15 minutes early so you can check in, get a seat. As soon as we have 150 people, we get going.
Did you say 7?
7 p.m.
PM?
7 p.m.
At the auditorium.
On the screen right now.
There you go.
And you're just on it.
There's also, we taped
6 p.m.
a,
for us.
Yes.
we taped a show on cable TV. I moderated it with Liz Shea, the town planner, with Rick Collins, who's been a member of the planning board for 10 years, and with their consultant Judy Barrett, about the MBTA zoning bylaw article, which, even though I thought it was very informative. It was about an hour thing, and I know a lot of people have already watched it on cable, but it's available on cable, or you can go to Abington Cam's YouTube webpage and watch it anytime. And I'll thank you on behalf of the residents for all the time you guys put in, and for the residents that don't know it, they're all volunteers. Andrew's a town employee, but these guys and girls are all volunteers, and although it's one of the hardest working and busiest agendas, I also think it's one of the more rewarding and educational committees in the town.
Definitely.
It used to be almost a prerequisite to running for selectman. There was a time where, FinCom members became board of selectmen, and it was almost kind of a stepping stone and almost, like I said, a prerequisite to it, because you learn so much about
So much.
why things have to work
How
certain
things
ways.
work, what things cost.
Yep. And how, everyone's working together, trying to get to work, and each department rallies for their own cause, which is their duty. So a lot of tough decisions, but I think the people at home appreciate your debates, because you all bring up different points of view, and by the time they get to town meeting, I firmly believe that most people who come to town meeting have watched a lot of your meetings, because they already come well versed in whatever is being discussed, because they've listened to your debate. So for that, thank you. Helps us move things along, and people can vote on what they understand.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Yeah, we definitely
Yes.
appreciate the information you bring us. And
I got the easy job, I just call out and call names, you can speak.
So are we looking for a motion?
Actually, we have a couple things left on the agenda to make sure that we go
Yeah.
over all of our,
Mail?
there is no correspondence.
Okay, no
Are
correspondence.
there any liaison reports? Does not appear that there are any. We've already discussed our next meeting. It will be March 20th, next Wednesday, and then we will meet before town meeting at 6 o'clock, somewhere in the
High school.
Abington Middle High School. And that takes us through our agenda.
Motion to adjourn?
Were there minutes that we had to?
Oh, that's right, we do have.
Motion to minutes?
That's right, I forgot
January
about that.
24th
Excuse me,
minutes.
I'll put my
Wait,
motion
TJ,
on
we have
hold.
homework tonight.
So Kelly provided us excellent set of minutes for the January 24th meeting. Let's see, who was present? Daniel, Barbara, myself, Greg. Oh, it was the exact same group that were present for that meeting.
Motion to
That's
approve the meeting
convenient.
minutes of
January
January 24th, 2024.
Second?
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Without any, all those in favor of approving the January 24th meeting minutes?
Aye.
All those opposed, abstaining, they are approved. That actually takes us
Motion
to
to
our.
adjourn.
Now we have a motion to adjourn and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Without any,
Wait, this table.
all those in favor of adjourning,
Aye.
Hi.
abstaining, voting no, we are adjourned.